This week's reading in the Torah is Matot and Masa. It goes together. We have two readings that will be combined, and there's very little, both physically in the way of what's incorporated in both readings. The second reading simply has to do with the sojourns or the journeys of the Jews, and the first one has some very peculiar topics that, namely, that there is very little in the way of commentary, and even where there is commentary, it's very difficult. The first verse begins with, and God says to the heads of the tribes, for them to convey to the children of Israel, Rosh Matot, and therefore it's called Matot, the tribes. And and then it goes on to discuss the aspect of vows. And all of the commentators make an attempt to explain why here doesn't the verse begin with, as it normally does, whenever there is a particular precept that's going to be mentioned. It should say, and God says to Moses, and Moses tells the Jews. And here, suddenly, Moses is discussing this particular aspect to the Nesiim, to the heads of the tribes. All of them ask this question, and the answers that are given, it becomes quite obvious that there are two problems. Number one, why the change in the methodology, in the way the Torah usually proceeds. As I mentioned before, that God tells Moses, and then Moses tells the Jews, etc. And secondly, why the section about vows was chosen as to distinguish the heads of the tribes here, as opposed to any other section in the entire Torah. Something very unique here. And what's so significant about vows? And even the section, and it says, and the verse continues, that when a person makes a vow to God, in other words, what's a vow? And also the commentators explain this. Usually, the time for making vows is when one is in trouble. Like we had the case of Yaakov, there was trouble, and he says, God, if you see me through this, I will contribute this or that, or whatever he says. And so many times people make vows to God, meaning it may be to a charity, it may be to an institution, whatever, in times of need. Or sometimes a person makes an isar al nafsho, which means a prohibition on himself, meaning to deny himself some of the pleasures of life, and he'll say that I vow never again to eat bread. I vow. In other words, he's placing a particular prohibition on a particular item. So that's another form of a vow. And the Torah cautions that, and this is one of the 613 precepts, and one of the 365 prohibitions. Lo yachel devaro. He should not disobey his words, all of that which comes out of his mouth. Here again, there is a negative tone where it says, and one should not, lo yachel devaro, he should not cause his words to be chilul, desecrated. All the verse could have said was, he should observe his words. He's made a promise, made a vow. He must keep his word. Doesn't say that. Doesn't put it in a positive tone as a positive precept that he must keep his word. You make a promise, got to keep the promise. It says no, lo yachel devaro. And that's another question that we have to deal with. And the last aspect concerning vows is, and this might be disturbing to some people, in one instance where if a parent, I should say a father specifically, here's a vow of his daughter. In other words, she is not yet betrothed to someone else. She still lives in his home, and if he hears her making a vow, he can nullify, he can cancel out the vow. And by the same token, if a husband hears the vow of his wife, he can also cancel the vow. If he hears it and he remains silent, then the vow becomes an effective, valid vow. And this is the entire section here that's being dealt with. And it seems like there's some repetition, but we won't go into that matter. Now, what is the significance here of vows? In Parshat Pinchas, incidentally, I chose this week rather than maybe we'll be here until next Tuesday. We could have had next week's Parsha, which is Devarim, but I had no choice. Either it was this week where there is just one page of Zohar, and so I know this is a reading, this is a Zohar class, and next week, Devarim, where there's no Zohar. So I just decided that we'll at least take, we'll take the Zohar, which, where there is obviously one page of Zohar, but here particularly there is no discussion except on another matter that we'll discuss this morning. But anyway, in Parshat Pinchas, from this section comes the idea that is well familiar to all of us, and that is the idea of vows. Vows. There's a shot coming up. And of course, the most important holiday in the Jewish calendar is called Nidrei. And Kol Nidrei, which makes Yom Kippur so familiar and so important, is the idea that we on the night of Kol Nidrei, where everyone attends, those who still, still attend synagogue, we recite in Aramaic the cancellation of all vows that we may have undertaken during the year. Kol Nidrei. And this is the way this very important holiday begins. In other words, all of the fasting and everything else that goes into this holiday seems to center around the idea of Kol Nidrei. And why does Kol Nidrei center around this idea of vows? Again, that and the Ari himself in the discussion, which I'm sure many of you have already heard in the classes in the previous years, as to what the Ari says and has to say about this idea of vows. And just to quote the Ari, "Haminik shenagul hosi sefer Torah or gimel sifrei Torot b'leil Yom Kippurim va'omrim alav hatarat nadarim." In other words, we take out the sefer Torah and then we begin the hatarat nadarim, the removal or hatarar, the lahatir. Lahatir usually means to permit. Lahatir, shu kol nidrei, which is the prayer of kol nidrei, and the origin of the kol nidrei, says the Ari, is in Parshat Pinchas. In Parshat Pinchas, 256. 256. It says 256, but I think it's an error, if I remember correctly. Right, it's 255. And here the Zohar goes on to explain this idea of Yom Kippur, and says that Yom Kippur stems from the idea of Etz HaChaim, and Otam Sheish Aleim Gzar Din B'Neder U'Shavua, and those who have a Gzar Din, meaning that because they had not fulfilled the vow, or on the contrary, transgressed the idea of a prohibition that one can place upon themselves. In other words, they're not going to eat meat, or they're not going to eat some type of food, or they will not do some action during the day, during the year, where they place a particular prohibition on themselves, and therefore, once they have violated this self-appointed vow, so then, says the Zohar, this is a Gzar Din, B'Neder U'Shavua, Shalo L'Shanot HaGzar Din, Hitkinu Lo Mishum Zeh Kol Nidrei. And therefore, this prayer was cited that the decree which accompanies the violation of nidarim, of vows, was chosen to be cited on Yom Kippur. Now, there's so many other violations. Someone had committed murder during the year, or or some of the 365 prohibitions. And yet, when it comes to Yom Kippur, the day for attaining some forgiveness, this was the prayer that relates to forgiveness has to do with vows and nothing else. There was nothing else mentioned in that Kol Nidrei. It's in Shin Yud Gimel 313 for those of you who want to peruse it. And the Zohar answers, Vows are considered in the same framework as Havaya, Shehu Tiferet. Zerampin, in other words, the Tetragrammaton. Vashua, he b'shem Adni. And when one swears, there's a difference between a vow and a shvua. Shvua is swearing, and one is assuming an obligation. One is in the category, says the Zohar, of Zerampin. One is in the category of Bina. And I believe that this is discussed as to why the Kol Nidrei refers to Shuvah and Neder. Is that in the marathon on Yom Kippur? Okay. All right, so we don't have to go into the detail as to why this particular violation is the one where Kol Nidrei is. Briefly stated, all of the other prohibitions, thou shalt not steal, is a particular prohibition, or all of the other prohibitions relate between myself and God, and myself and fellow man. But vows and shvuah, where you assume an obligation, deals with man and himself. In other words, he has undertaken his own prohibition. He is undertaken to abstain from something. It's not the Torah that directed him to make a vow, but he makes this vow that now must be fulfilled. This is the only instant of where man himself. And then, of course, the prohibition is lo yachel dvaro. One should not desecrate his promise or his vow. But that follows after the vow is initiated by the individual himself. And that, in essence, gives us an idea as to possibly why this relates to to our first question. Why was this particular section concerning vows first transmitted by Moses to the heads of the tribe? If you recall, we had another incident with the heads of the tribes. That was in Parshat Shlach Lecha. Parshat Shlach Lecha. Again, there, Moses, the leaders of the tribe come to Moses and say, we'd like to see what the land is all about. And God says to Moses, Shlach Lecha. That's a good idea. Good idea. Send the heads of the tribe, the chieftains of the tribe, to investigate explore just what the land of Israel is all about, and let them come back and give a report to the Jews as to what they might expect when they come into the land of Israel. And in that particular section, and it's not by coincidence that this section is always read in the period of the 3 weeks of mourning. In other words, from Shiva Asar Tammuz, the 17th day of Tammuz, when the enemy pierced the walls, meaning they had overtaken the walls of Jerusalem, both in the first temple, second temple, and also these 3 weeks until the culmination with Tisha B'Av, when the temples were both 1 and 2 were destroyed. And their return, these chieftains returned, of course, with a report that was very negative. And from that day on, there was a decree that those Jews would not enter the land of Israel. And, as God says, they will always be crying. This will always be a period of mourning, and to this very day, we still refrain from certain aspects of pleasures from the 17th day of Tammuz until the 9th day of Av. That is one and very significant aspect of the chieftains. They came back with this report, and the Zohar says, in Shlach Lecha, because they were afraid that once the Jews had entered the land of Israel, they would no longer have to be governed by chieftains of the tribes, and so initially they would be losing their political status in the community, and that's why they came back with this negative report, while at the same time, the Zohar also says that these people were tzaddikim. They were tzaddikim. And without going into, again, a broad definition and explanation as to what happened, we're talking about tzaddikim. They come to Israel, and now things changed. They were tzaddikim, meaning righteous people. They were going with an intent to explore the land, see if the land is, as God said it would be, a land of milk and honey. And first question that the Zohar raises is if they were tzaddikim. I mean, why would they even question God if God had already mentioned to Moses that this land is a land of milk and honey, and there's no need to fear the people who inhabited the land of Israel at that time, that there would be no problem. They come back and say the nations over there are very strong, and while some of the fruit looks great, etc., but the report was placed in such a negative tone that the Jews began to wail and, of course, complain, God, why did you take us out of Egypt, etc. And that incident goes on the Zohar to explain that while they were tzaddikim, and they were tzaddikim, that doesn't change. When they came into the land of Israel, the idea of sending these 12 chieftains who were tribes was to establish, and this is a great revelation, but of course today, because of 20th century science, today, that what Moses and God were telling these 12 tzaddikim, 12 righteous people, when they were going to explore this land, that because the Jews had not been there before, meaning as a nation, when they would come now as 12 chieftains to explore the land, with their consciousness, they were going to establish whether this was a country of milk and honey or the other way around. They were either the country's a good country, it's a wealthy country, it can support the material needs of the people. And here the Zohar goes on to explain that God had told them it was a land of milk and honey. However, what the implication and the reason for sending these tzaddikim was that while the physical status of Israel was that there are trees, etc., because Moses also says, go and find out if there are trees, im yesh etz or ayin, or maybe there's no trees. Right. Moses couldn't see if there were trees or there weren't trees, and therefore he's sending now the spies to bring back the report whether there's trees or not. And the answer is that was not his question. The question was, as chieftains, meaning people, what did it mean, 1hr&23min Matot? People who were heads of the tribes, and we have learned that tribes have some relationship to astrology. What does that mean? They were going to control the cosmic influences over Israel and over the entire world, as we know that what goes on in Israel goes on all around the world. What flies in Israel is what flies. Hatred in Israel, hatred around the world. Murder in Israel, murder around the world. Violations of human decency in Israel, violation of human decency around the world. Everything that we observe as somehow as a fragmented universe, as unfortunately most people, when they're political analysts, take each section of the globe as a separate entity without adhering to the principles of 20th century physics, which says there is no such thing as separation, fragmentation in the world. If a butterfly flaps its wings in China, it will affect an action on the other side of the globe. And more so does that apply from the standpoint and perspective of the Zohar, is Israel. Now, what consciously is going on in the minds of the people in Israel, that is the consciousness of the entire world. Therefore, when they came, and therefore, either the influences of the cosmos will be one of a positive nature, or if the consciousness, and these people were going there to establish the consciousness, what kind of influence would govern not only the land of Israel, but the entire world? And when they went there to establish the consciousness, not only of Israel, but to establish the consciousness of the entire world, what happened? These very same righteous people come back with a negative and a negative report, meaning they had established a negative consciousness by their presence, being people of high levels of consciousness, and that's why they were chosen. They weren't elected officials. They weren't elected by each tribe. They weren't elections where 2 or 3 people were vying for the same position. These people were chosen. And the reason they were chosen for this particular position was because they were channels by which they could draw and they can connect with whatever particular cosmic influences were during that period were being felt in Israel and around the world. And they established a negative consciousness. Why would they establish a negative consciousness? That's what the Zohar says. Obviously, they established that negative consciousness because that's what they came back with. And didn't lie, but painted and exaggerated the condition of the land of Israel. But they were tzaddikim. Zohar does not dwell on that aspect. In fact, he just mentions they were tzaddikim, and then here these same people came back, and as the verse in the Bible specifically states, they were responsible for chaos that would befall the Jewish people in the future. And the 9th of Av has seen throughout history as to having played a significant role in chaos and disorder. Because that was the consciousness that was established by these 12 chieftains in the land of Israel. But what happened? What happened? And the answer, I guess by other contributions of the Zohar, gives us some insight into what these chieftains were about. And that might give us and provide us with an answer as to why this section is called the tribes. What does the tribes have to do with the vows? And our question was, 2, what's the connection between vows and the tribes, the chieftains of the tribes in this particular section? But the answer that we can ascribe to as to what happened when these 12 highly leveled consciousness people came to Israel and established the consciousness of chaos and disorder. Had they come back with the report, the true report, that this was indeed a land of milk and honey, and it didn't mean physically a land of milk and honey, but the Zohar says, if the presence of Etz HaChaim, not Etz HaDat, but Etz HaChaim was present, they would establish either Etz HaChaim, which to us is the other reality in this world, the reality where the second law of thermodynamics does not exist, the world of chaos does not exist, the world of death does not exist. There is another world in our midst that does not exist. We call that the world of, quote, occasional miracles, where we're faced with a certain situation, and suddenly we ask God and pray for a miracle. The miracle occurs. What does that mean, a miracle? When is a miracle? Is an earthquake a miracle? Is a tidal wave a miracle? What does a miracle mean? An unnatural occurrence. But naturally for us, or for people, for them a miracle always implies the end result was one of a wonderful nature. Out of the ordinary. Supernatural. Something supernatural. Something above the norm took place in our lives. And we call it a miracle. And we're so happy because it was a supernatural event. But then again, so are earthquakes. But they don't have happy endings. Therefore, we don't say miracles are earthquakes, but aren't they at the same time supernatural events? No, miracles by a misnomer. Misnomer. If your definition of miracles is a supernatural event, then earthquakes also should be termed miracles. But somehow in our corrupt definitions of what a miracle means, we refer to as only where the ending is one of a gratifying nature, or one that continues to make us happy. But they're so far in between. That is the world, but we don't call that miracles. Miracles means, from a Kabbalistic definition, being connected to the tree of life reality, being connected to that frame of reference that does not and is not governed by the world of chaos, the world of Eitz Hadat. That means when things happen of a non-chaotic nature, it is not a miracle. It is only that we have now established ourselves, we have raised our levels of consciousness to the level of the world where chaos does not exist. Chaos does not exist. And on occasion we reach that kind of level of consciousness. When we do, the miracles happen. But that should be the norm. But unfortunately, we find ourselves so seldom in the realm of Eitz HaChaim, in the realm of a non-chaotic world, so we call it miracle, because it happens so infrequently. Therefore, we refer to the term of as miracle. However, that's the norm. It's the norm. But take a look at the landscape. Take a look at the earth and its inhabitants. What do you find? You find death, destruction, earthquakes, etc. But that, as you have learned and heard on many occasions by the Zohar, that, and I think Karen mentioned it yesterday, last night, that landscape of chaos that seems to be more part of our personal lives than the worlds of miracles is our own doing, including earthquakes, tidal waves, etc. It is our own doing, because we have violated the realm of the tree of life reality. This is what the chieftains established when they came to Israel. What was wrong with Israel? Why was this kind of consciousness established? Because the land of Israel, as we have learned on many occasions, is the energy center of the world. It is the land from which emerges the tree of life reality, the world of stability, the world of law and order. If you do not live up to that standard, meaning if you live in Israel, and you do not live up to the standards of law and order, meaning that, without getting into the politics of it, if you cannot raise yourself above the idea of chaos, meaning, well, there are Muslims living in Israel. Well, I'm Jewish, and I know intrinsically the two sides can't meet. Two sides can't get together. Two sides can't cooperate. For whatever good reasons, for whatever bad reasons. The fact is that if the consciousness of the people are connected to chaos, for all the good reasons, and for all justifiable reasons, and being 100% 100% correct. Couldn't ask for anything more than that. Being 100% correct in our behavior. This is the way I behave. This is the way I look at upon not only Muslims, but then here again, I might not even like maybe one of my neighbors in Israel. Then what is being established is the world of Eitz Hadat by that inhabitant. By whom? Not by the Muslims. By the Jew. Because he already lives in an atmosphere. He brings the consciousness of Eitz Hadat into the consciousness of Israel and also the entire world. And if there is chaos in Bosnia, if there is chaos in Ecuador, if there is chaos in Sri Lanka, that chaos originates. The source of that chaos is in Israel. And that is what the 1hr&23min, these chieftains, had established. And that now, we can now begin to understand the connection, why this particular section is known as Matot. We said, what are vows? Recall, we gave the definition, which is rather simple. This is not a self-inflicted, but this is a self-assumed prohibition. Meaning, this does not deal with me and somebody else. This deals with my own consciousness. I have chosen the vow. I have assumed obligations. I have taken upon myself to make certain contributions. Then what does it say? Lo yachel devaro. This is the connection to Matot. This is the connection to the idea of these chieftains. Sure, there are 12 signs of the zodiac. There are influences that become manifested in the lifestyle of all of Earth's inhabitants. But nevertheless, who establishes those kind of conditions? Who establishes whether there will be chaos or whether there will be a land of milk and honey? The individual himself. Where? In Israel. In Israel. Now you might say, does one have to observe Yom Kippur outside of Israel? If the idea, and this is what it appears to be, the essential idea that where was this idea of consciousness established? Or where would the consciousness that is being established govern the rest of the world? Where? In Israel. Now, if Yom Kippur seems to have a connection on that level, and that's what the Zohar explains when he says vows and oaths are not simply obligations that one should not desecrate. It goes far beyond that. So it says no, one is in the realm of, it takes in both realms. Both metaphysical realms. Has nothing to do with bread or some other prohibition that one assumed as towards any particular physical element that exists in this world, but rather it's dealing with the consciousness of metaphysical worlds. That's what vows refer to. Zohar's definition. My consciousness and its relationship to the world of Eitz Hadat, to the world of Eitz Hayim. That's what vows are about. And the cancellation is through the Kol Nidrei. What does it mean, the cancellation? That if I violated the atmosphere, I violate the environment. I violate the environment of this world. then I have violated and caused chaos throughout the entire world. Me, as an individual, have contributed to the pollution, to the hatred, to ethnic cleansing, all of these items that we all abhor, we all hate. When? And it applies to me. I mean, how many of us have sleepless nights because of the ethnic cleansing going on in Bosnia? How many of us? But if you read in your daily newspaper, and because we're Jewish, you read about two people who lost their lives at the hands of terrorists, that excites all Jews all around the world. The idea of fragmentation. When this is part of our consciousness, then what results from that consciousness is a violation, meaning we are adhering to the tree of knowledge consciousness, meaning we are trusting and placing our consciousness in which realm of reality? The one of the tree of life reality? No. Into the fragmented world of tree of knowledge. This is what the chieftains had established, and this is what, because of the power that emanates in Israel, and these chieftains could not handle, and they did not handle, despite the fact that they were righteous people, they couldn't handle this kind of energy. Couldn't handle it. They were overcome. Everything became magnified. What they experienced in Israel, they experienced because they were tzaddikim, because they were of a quantum nature. But then again, which nature? Was it the nature of Etz HaChaim, as Moses said? Is there etz? Are there trees there? Meaning, are you going to establish Etz HaChaim, or are you going to establish the tree of knowledge reality? And therefore, we can understand the verse of Shlach Lecha when God says, what you have established, you will establish forever. Why forever? So they came back with a report of a negative nature. I mean, why this influence throughout the centuries, throughout Jewish history? Because these people, being on that level of consciousness, created that environment that we ourselves suffer to this very day. And it is incumbent, it is our obligation to restore, to remove. Lo yachel devaro. Those words that were once established, those words must be transferred. One of desecration. What do you mean desecration? Halal. Empty space. Again, whatever 20th century now physics speaks about empty space is so beautiful. Empty space meaning more empty space, less revelation of the light. And this is the connection. Because with our utterance, as the chieftains then, but it doesn't mean what they said. The vow is not that important, but that this vow is something that originates in my consciousness. Then we refer to the question, does one have to observe Yom Kippur outside of land of Israel? And the answer is yes. Why? Since we're from what we understand, vows, oaths deal with energy, deal with consciousness. And therefore, if we're outside of Israel, there is very little influence that we can we can have upon the rest of the world if we're living outside of Israel. And therefore, if you notice in our Beit HaKnesset, we have many pictures, but not pictures of a Rembrandt or a Van Gogh, but pictures of people who are buried in Israel. Buried in Israel. Because we have learned in Kabbalah from the Zohar that when Rabbi Shimon passed away, where was he buried? And there arose a conflict between different cities in the area of where Rabbi Shimon had passed away. Each one wanted the kavod, each one wanted the honor of having such a great tzaddik, the man who could violate all of the etzadat realities, all of the known chaotic situations that exist as they exist in our lives, where for him, these principles did not exist, but he was totally connected to the tree of life reality. These people everyone wanted this tzaddik to be buried in their area. And what happens? The body goes on this ladder, structure of a ladder, and it proceeds to where Rabbi Shimon is buried to this day. No one chose the site. And what does that mean? Where Rabbi Shimon obviously is an energy center. When we go to a tzaddik, why is he there? In fact, the first time that it really brought home to me was I don't know if we have a picture of it here of the Rabbi Yehoyada Kohen Gadol. Do we have that beautiful picture? No? Okay. Where the light shines. That's right. Yeah. Oh, we have it? Okay. All right. That incidentally was a picture taken by us, and there were no clouds in the sky because this was in the summertime. There were no clouds. How that picture ever came. But anyway, one asks, the Kohen Gadol, he served for 40 years in the temple. And you've got to see, he's in this valley where it's totally practically inaccessible to get there. Dangerous. It's on the side of a very steep inclined mountain. Very dangerous as you walk down. There's a drop there of maybe 600-700 feet. Dangerous. But how did he come all the way from Jerusalem? And this is where he's buried. As if he walked to be buried here. Why wasn't he buried in Jerusalem? Because we know sites where tzaddikim are buried, like Yosef HaTzaddik in Shechem, they were making this physical connection for us to that particular site. So therefore, when we say the Kol Nidrei on Yom Kippur, while the halakha is that no matter whether you live in Israel or you live outside the territorial areas of Israel, you have to observe the Yom Kippur. But living outside of Israel, that's right, we have it here. That's right. But here's the mountain. This is the way you walk down to come to that place. Couldn't he find a better place? Make it easy for us if we wanted to visit his gravesite, choose a better place. But he didn't choose it. Who buried him? Did he go there by himself? Or he went with an entourage and then, he suddenly had a heart attack and died right there and therefore he was buried there? Oh, no. He knew that particular location is an energy point in Israel, as there are in the Hebron with the Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. For us to influence not only the total environment, but our own environment, if we do not teleport ourselves, if we do not transport ourselves to Israel in our prayers, forget it. Forget it. And this is supported by Rashi. For me to make this kind of a statement, that means, what about all those Jews who are praying outside of it? There are more Jews praying outside of Israel than in Israel. Are you saying all these Jews are not praying? Well, there are certain praying. But are their prayers effective? Are their prayers making any changes in the world? The answer is no. Unless they have transported, as these 1hr Matot, these chieftains, went there to make the change, went there to establish the consciousness of whether it be Yetzer Hayim, the realm of so-called miracles, or the realm of Eitz Hadat. And therefore, when we say the Kol Nidrei, we are establishing the consciousness of both worlds, the physical world and the world of Eitz Hayim. Both are metaphysical. Everything that happens on this level has already been established before it makes its appearance. It's everything in this world. A human being does not make its appearance does not make his or her appearance as a human being. First, there's a sperm, there's an egg, there's a fetus, all concealed. There's another world in the physical world, known as the world of Malchut. And then comes this, but everything that we observe in this physical world has already been established, has already been placed into its position as to how it emerges in this physical world. You want to make changes? Got to make changes there. And therefore this Kol Nidrei, which is in Aramaic, and without going into the reasons as to why it's in Aramaic, but for the same reason that the Zohar is written in Aramaic, because it transcends the levels of Malchut and goes up into the levels of Eitz Hayim, where if we can make our proper connections there, if we can't change the entire environment of the world, at least change our own immediate environment. And this is the connection between vows and the idea of the 1hr Matot. Then we have here another section that I guess even I find sometimes preferable to just overlook as if it doesn't exist. Maybe that's the blessing of why most Jews in the world can't read Hebrew, and even those who can read Hebrew, most of them don't read the Bible. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Anyway, here we'll talk in the next section, and immediately follows this section of vows. Oh, yeah, I should touch upon the idea of if a wife makes a vow, you remember, the husband can cancel it. Now, if you have some woman who belongs to a woman she says, what happens if the husband makes a vow? Can the woman cancel the husband's vow? No? Now, there you are. Segregation in its worst form. Okay, we in Kabbalah, we at least explain why the separation of the sexes in the synagogue. Positive energy, negative energy. Yeah, but this is a clear demonstration of chauvinism. Clear demonstration. No two ways about it. If a husband hears the vow of his wife, he can cancel it out. But when we have learned by virtue of the Zohar that the Torah is only a combination of names, what does that mean? It's not referring, it never refers, never, N-E-V-E-R, refers to physical descriptions. We're talking about a father, we're not talking about a father. We're talking about a daughter or a husband or a wife. We are not beginning, as I said, we do not begin with a description of this world, because this world is only a reflection of what exists on another level. what the Torah is talking about. Male and female is discussing cause and effect. Cause and effect. Someone's an electrician, someone is a plumber. These people thought up the idea of male and female, right? You have the socket and you have the plug. Anyone knows a little electricity? They call the socket female and call the plug male. In plumbing, you have one pipe that goes into the other, right? The pipe that goes into, it becomes attached within, it's called the male. The outside is female. Now, I guess maybe plumbers were all chauvinistic or electricians were chauvinistic. But I think the idea is not a question of male and female in the sense of being male or being female, but rather dealing with consciousness. As the Zohar says, the whole Torah deals only with names. What do you mean by names? Levels of consciousness. Nothing more and nothing less. So the idea of chauvinism obviously immediately falls away because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about consciousness. A male can have a female consciousness and a female can have a male consciousness. What does that mean, a male consciousness? And what does it mean, female consciousness? Just like what a sperm and an egg represents. Just what in electrical terminology or plumbing jargon, this is it. It's referring to channeling or referring to the recipiency. Nothing more, nothing less. Each one represents a particular consciousness. Nothing more and nothing less. Again, here is a demonstration. When we were discussing vows, we said we're not discussing vows, we're discussing consciousness. Nothing more, nothing less. When it says, when the father or the husband hears a vow made by a female, he can cancel it out. Is it a negative tone or is it a chauvinistic tone? No. Has nothing to do with the idea of female and male. What it has to do is channeling and recipiency. What is the pipe? Or what is the plug? What is the plug? And what is the socket? Socket is a recipient concept. The plug is something that's inserted. It is the channeling. The Torah is teaching us that in this world, you belong to one of two consciousnesses. You belong to either the reactive consciousness of the people of the world, or you belong to the proactive consciousness of the world. You belong to the reactive consciousness of the world, or you govern the consciousness of the world. This is why this particular section again deals to the idea of Matot. Why is this section called Matot? Because we have the choice. And then, of course, it becomes manifested on this level. You plant a seed, if it's an apple seed, is there any choice in what kind of fruit will this tree bear? Can it be changed? Once it reaches this level of physicality, once it becomes manifested, once it becomes a corporeal entity, nothing you can do. They can try from today and tomorrow to do fetus genetic engineering. And this is the great promise of the future, right? Going to go right into the fetus. Not going to wait for the child to appear, if Chas v'sholem with a particular defect, the brain or whatever. No, go right into the fetus. Create this new genetic engineering, and there we can find it easier to make the changes. Do they know what they're doing? Have they taken the whole quantum perspective of what this particular genetic engineering has and influences the rest of this fetus? Of course they don't know. I haven't got the slightest idea how one affects the other. That's why we have in medicine prevailing allopathic medicine. What is that? Your finger hurts? Let's see how we can treat the finger. You have a headache? What do? You take an aspirin. Remove the headache. Where does the headache begin? Where's the origin of the headache? In the head? No, it could be in the foot. It is the head. The head. The thing that channels everything. Governs. It gives the signals. It provides us with the clues. The branches are only the effects. What the Torah is referring to is to teach us. You want to make changes? You want to cancel things out? As the father here with the daughter, or the husband with the wife? Talking about the husband being of a higher nature. Ruling the roost, so to speak? No, it had nothing to do with that. It's teaching us that when your consciousness is at the level, not of the effect, but at origin, to be proactive rather than reactive, because if you're reactive, there is no movement, there is no consciousness. Someone slaps me and I react, no consciousness. That's automatic. Action and reaction. Normal reaction to respond. Someone of a higher nature of consciousness, when he receives a blow, he doesn't react, stops for a moment, begins to think. He wants to be proactive. Only another indication that this whole section of Matot deals with consciousness, that we either establish one form of consciousness or another. Either we're in the reactive consciousness, where unfortunately the chieftains of these tribes fell into, observe the physical environment, rather than establish a whole new consciousness on the level of consciousness, and not be governed by the physical environment as it was, because all of that could be changed. Where can it be changed? The Torah is teaching us. At the male level. What does it mean at the male level? Before the reaction, before the effect. In effect, there is no way to change it. Even if there is a way of changing it, it then requires a procedure. It requires a procedure. In this case, hatarat nidarim. You need people, a bet din, to sit around and try to undo. Yes, there are many ways how it can be undone. But preferably before the action even became manifest. Because to what extent it can be undone remains to be seen. Depends on the consciousness of the individual. Hatavat chalom. Someone has a dream. Bad dream. Chas v'shalom. Comes and has three people, the bet din, who are empowered to change manifestations. But again, talking about dreams. Change the origin. Even dreams which are of a metaphysical nature still fall into the category of a manifested state. Because what brought this dream in the first place? That's where these three people sitting and creating hatavat chalom, transforming this negative dream, which is already a manifested state, which will become a physical, corporeal event in the lives or life of the person having that dream. It's already become manifested. The dream has made a consciousness contact with the future. That's what dreams are about. But that already for us today in 20th century science knows that the future is here now. Then what's the difference between tomorrow and now? Teaches us the Torah, whether its source, its origin, or in a manifested state. Tomorrow means manifested state. Yesterday means prior. Means it does not have to be in a metaphysical state. Yesterday also emerged as a physical event. That's not what yesterday means. Yesterday means origin, channeling, connecting with the source, reaction. The event, as it appears, is female. And where can that be changed? It can be changed at this level. But the consciousness of the person who is doing this hatavat chalom, again, must understand what is happening, what is being created at this point. What is actually happening is genetic engineering, changing the origin, changing the source, the root of what ultimately develops on the level that we're familiar with. Now we come to a little incident here, which I say most people would prefer to ignore. We won't have that much time, but even if I leave you with a feeling of ill content, better that than ignorance, because ignorance is really no excuse of the law. Ignorance, incidentally, is not bliss. Although for the moment, if what we don't know, what we haven't heard, won't hurt us, but that's not true. Once it's become manifested, the fact that I don't want to hear it, don't tell me, it's already become manifested. There's no way you can escape it, and certainly by saying I don't want to hear it, I don't want to know about it, you will not escape the consequence of what you don't want to hear. Here it's discussing a war with the Midianites. And they're told to wage war against the Midianites. If you recall, the Midianites were brought by Bilam at the end of Parshat Pinchas, and they caused, through their influence, catastrophe. They brought 24,000 Jews to their death, and now they're going to wage war. I don't want to go into that section at the end of Parshat Pinchas, but that's where the plague that struck down 24,000 Jews took place at the end of last week's reading. And now they're waging war, and which it says, and the Jews should annihilate, kill all male. All male. Well, that's not enough. Not enough. And and they should take captive. First of all, you kill all the males. And then if the rest of the women and children, how are they to be disposed of? Reading from the Torah. No interpretations, no explanations. And the women of the Midianites and their children, all their animals, all their cattle, all their possessions, everything, have to be dealt with. And it says that women, little children, if women were married or young girls had been had sexual intercourse with male, they are also to be destroyed, and all of the physical possessions were to be burnt. It doesn't describe how the method of death for these males, all males. A question of what age of the male, and so on. And then in verse 13 of chapter 31, it says that Moses and Elazar, the Kohen, and all of the heads of the tribes went out to meet the victorious army that was sent to destroy these people, and Moses is angry. Moses is angry. Vayomer Alehem Moshe. And Moshe says to them, I see you left all the females to live. You permitted all the females. Didn't I tell you that certain females were to be destroyed? And the reason for that is, don't you remember what Bilam did back in Parshat Pinchas? That through the Midianite women, the cause of the plague originated. And now, again, repeats. And he also says, you remember there was a plague in the congregation of the Lord, meaning the Jews. They are part of the congregation of the Lord. Vata, now, Irgu kol zachar bataf, v'kol isha yodat ish lemishkav zachar harogu. Now kill all male children, just in case it wasn't clear before. Kill all male children right now. Now these are captives. No necessity for war. The war is over. They conquered the entire nation of the Midianites. So destroy all male children and every woman that know of a man to lie with a man, meaning there was sexual intercourse with a male, harogu. Harogu. In other words, lesbians could remain alive. But those who had intercourse with males, they must be put to death. V'kol atapa nashim, and all little girls, well, meaning young girls, etc. V'kol tapa nashim asher lo yodu mishkav zachar, that did not have, can't imagine how, they must have been geniuses. To understand, sometimes a woman can lose her virginity, not necessarily by sexual intercourse. The Talmud even says that. And so these people knew. And he's saying, now go investigate which ones had sexual intercourse, which women. Go investigate. And those who had sexual intercourse with a male should be destroyed. And including kol tabanashim. Only those who did not know sexual intercourse, can you permit them to remain alive? Then it goes on to explain that those who are going to commit this act of, won't say murder, couldn't be appropriate. After all, Moses certainly received this instruction from God. We don't assume that Moses would be teaching the people of Israel the laws of God without having been told by God. And then all of these not murderers. Torah doesn't call them murderers. Kol horeg nefesh. I don't know what the difference is. Well, homicide is also murder, but when someone drives an automobile and unfortunately, chas v'sholom, he kills somebody, we don't call it murder. We call it vehicular homicide. We don't call him a murderer. A murderer is someone with premeditative intent to kill somebody. And all of these people should then cleanse themselves. Have to cleanse themselves and even the clothing that they wore. And I'm going to leave you with that. You'll have to come Shabbat for the answer. All right, we'll stop over here. Okay.
Can we, as we understand the explanation that we received today, to come to an understanding that the reason that Moses was not let to come to Israel is because of the act of not establishing the Etz Chaim?
That's exactly. That's the Zohar says that, because he says, Shlach lecha. Do you want to know if you can enter the land of Israel or not? Your level of consciousness, obviously, is with the Etz Chaim. And Moses knew that too. And therefore, Moses says, come back and tell me what it looks like. Moses, you don't know what it looks like. I mean, Moses was above the idea of time, space, and motion. For him, Israel, 5,000 miles away, and here is all the same, because time, space, and motion for him did not exist. So what does it mean that God says for you? But that's the answer. How they establish the consciousness of Israel, if it fits into your realm, if they establish the Esadat, that level of consciousness, then this is not the place for you to be. And therefore he didn't enter the land of Israel.
The Jews were the cause of Moses
not entering the land of Israel. That's right.
Question number
even when he struck the stone, also had to do with the Israelites, and not he was punished for what he did.
His father can cancel the vow of a son.
A son being below the age of, although, yes, Talmud learns that out too. Yes.
To a certain age.
Yes, only until she. But a daughter until she's married, living in the household, it can be canceled out, irrespective of what age the female is. Because not that he cancels out a vow of a child, a male child, below the age of 13. The vow is not considered a vow, so you don't need the cancellation. Therefore, it's not discussed, because the vow itself. But here we're discussing a female over the age of 12 who creates this vow can be canceled.
So they start with the rush, the process of the tikkun of the universe?
Absolutely.
If they come with the right...
That's right. That's right. Okay, thank you.